Welcome back to Campus Debates Season 2. It's another Monday night at 8 p.m. and I know you have other things to do, but we are glad you chose to spend it with us here at Campus Debates. For all our returning viewers, welcome back. If this is your first time joining us for this particular show, welcome to Campus Debates Season 2. I'm sure you're wondering, what exactly is Campus Debates? It's a show where university students come together to engage in intellectual discourse about anything and everything existing in society right now. Could be relationship, could be governmental issues, could be policy changes that need to be made, but regardless, we are ready to engage in this intellectual conversation, especially from a youthful perspective, and that is why Campus Debates is so great. You are in for a treat for this particular show. Hear, hear. The rules of the game are simple. If you win the debate, you get 3 points. If you lose, you get 1 point. All in all, you get an opportunity to also garner up as much speaker scores as you'd possibly get. And if you get many speaker scores, you rise on the tab or on the scale altogether. Without further ado, let us welcome side proposition from CUEA University. Hear, hear. And from side opposition, we have debaters from Strathmore University here to begin the case of opposition. Hear, hear. I'll give the speakers an opportunity to introduce themselves and possibly their schools. Side proposition.
Hello, I'm Kyle Joseph from the Catholic University.
Hello, I'm Godfrey Kipkemei from CUEA, a law student.
Amazing. One is from the CUEA University, the other one is from CUEA University. But before we continue, quick question to side proposition. Would you rather be able to travel everywhere for free or eat everywhere for free?
Travel everywhere for free.
Travel everywhere rather than eat for free. He clearly does not know the high taxation we have right now. But oh well. Now, from side opposition, Strathmore University.
My name is Victoria Kendi, and I'm a law student from Strathmore University. Yeah.
My name is Shamia Muchesia. I'm also a law student from Strathmore.
The lawyers from side opposition. Now, quick question to side opposition as well. Would you rather have no sense of smell or no sense of taste?
Smell.
Now, we have had side proposition do not like to eat. Side opposition like to eat, so they'd rather have a taste rather than smell, but oh well. Now, the round is very simple. We have 3 judges here to introduce for us this particular debate. I will start with the chair, Brian Muindi, to give us the introduction for the rest of the panelists.
Cool. As you've heard, my name is Brian Muindi, a career judge, debate trainer, and as well as today I'm going to be a chief adjudicator once again. So, a little bit about me. I love Manchester City and all other teams like playing against Manchester United. And and I also love debates, and I hope I love the showdown today. Thank you.
My name is Alpha Zodoyo from Tangaza University College, a debate enthusiast and a teacher trainee.
My name is Juliet Ngele, a debater, an economic student, and honored to be part of the panelists.
Now, quick question to our judge, the chief adjudicator. He tells us he supports any other team that is not Man United. Do you have anything to defend yourself? This is national television, mind you.
Yes, I have. Manchester United plays at Old Trafford, which is symmetrical of Theatre of Dreams. That's why they play as if they're sleeping, and they never get any points. And with that said and done, I think glory times from Manchester United are long ago. They should just accept the fact that they're not a decent team anymore. Yeah.
You have heard from the chief adjudicator, but if you're an audience, a member of Manchester United, do not fear. Muindi cannot beat you in that game, even if he tried. Now, on to the round. The motion for this particular debate reads, this House believes that term limits should be imposed on all elected officials. This House believes that term limits should be imposed on all elected officials. With that, we open the debate with the first speaker from side proposition, KUEA University. Hear, hear.
Once again, my name is Godfrey Kipkeme, and I'd like to propose this motion, and in line to that, I'll go straight to the definition of terms, and I'll define the term limit, who is an elected official, and some functions of these elected officials, and then thereafter I'll look at the reasons why the term limits should be imposed on these elected officials. So what is a term limit? A term limit is a legal restriction on the number of terms an elected official can serve. So for example, in Kenya, we have the president. We all know that the president can serve for 2 terms, that is 5 years each. We also have the governor, the senator, I think. They also serve for 2 terms. But we have the member of parliaments and the member of county assemblies. I think their terms are not limited. They can serve for as many times as they want. And who is this an elected official? This elected official is a person who has been elected by voters to represent them, whether in parliament or in terms of development in their areas. So, and some of their functions usually is to implement, for example, the member of parliament is to implement and make the laws to this country. So there are some reasons why we should implement these term limits. The first one is that when you have term limits, it promotes accountability. Why? When a person, or rather, let's say, when an official is elected to a position, why will he or she have an accountability? You really know that you have 2 terms, and the first term, you'll use that term to make sure that at least when you come for the second time, the voters will consider you basing on what you did. The previous term. So this will tend to make this person actually to be more productive, and will be more productive, and this, we all know that it will be for the benefit of the society, or rather the community that this person has been elected to represent. Another thing, it will bring about the fresh ideas. We know when someone holds office for a long time, we'll have that monopoly of his agendas, which he or she wants to impose on the citizens for a long time. And we need to have other people present their ideas so that we get to move a nation. If this person has an analogy that doesn't fit the society, then it means when you have fresh ideas, it means that we'll be moving on a very good direction. Another thing is actually imposition of term limits controls corruption. Why would I say so? When you look at, for example, okay, let me use this example. During the Moise era, before the 1992 when Kenya became a multi-party state, you realized that there was a way in which power was misused. Like this guy concentrated all the power to himself, and he could decide what he wants, because he knew at the end of the day, I'm here and no one is going to take, like, I'm here and no one is going to take anything from me until a time that I'll wish. And now you see that until 1992, when Kenya became a multi-party state, and there was imposition of term limits where the president had those 2 term limits, that's where now the guy started maybe to be accountable and try to work in accordance with what the people want, so that he can secure maybe the favor of the voters the next season. I can give you also a very good example, or a very good scenario. There is a member of parliament who has been a member of, not a member of parliament actually, a member of county assembly, an MCA, who has been an MCA ever the office was created. That's in 2013. So I was considering this issue. This guy has been there since 2013, and apparently it is between 2 tribes. Now, since there is no term limit for this guy, he has actually made a way where he can manipulate the other tribe, because his tribe has more people. So in 2013, he got the votes because he has the number. In 2017, the same. 2017 the same, 2022, and also hopefully 2027 might go there for another term. Well, that, to be honest, doesn't help, because this person knows that I have the back of the people, and my term is limitless. So he actually does what he feels. Because when you look at his performance, literally he's doing nothing. He's doing nothing. And this is an issue that should be considered. We should create term limits for both the members of county assemblies and also the member of parliament, so that someone might not misuse the powers, because he knows at the end of the day, I'm here and I've captured the people, I've captured the community, and when it comes to election, they'll vote for me. So that's my submission. Thank you.
Proposition have made their case. Would like to welcome side opposition to begin the case of opposition side. Hear, hear.
Thank you. Okay, I will be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Few pieces of framing in today's debate. One thing you need to understand is the particular nature of politics. These guys entirely miss on that. This is an antagonistic race of politics. This essentially means that inflicting things like term limits, what essentially that means then is the particular person that is in power currently, if that person knows their term limit is just like 2 rounds, etc., whatnot, that person then has no incentive, has no particular incentive to make the citizens' life better. What essentially then they do is try to capitalize on the amount they have, on the amount of time they have left, right? So what this essentially then looks like is that people will try to, or politicians are then driven by their own incentives, right? They will try to amass wealth, the most amount of wealth they can amass. They will try to get more popularity, etc., whatnot, something that will essentially guarantee their next race, or like guarantee their next position in power for the next term, right? So even the particular decisions Gov tries to paint in a world that, oh, these people are more likely to do things that benefit society, we think then that is a lie. Let me tell you why, and why is this particularly true? Because these people, or rather the actions they take, building roads, building or like making flats, etc., whatnot, these are things stemmed to make you guys vote for them in future. So at the end of the day, we don't have any longevity in terms of their solutions, etc., whatnot. We think they fail on that end. Major points we give to you in this debate. We think the legitimacy of choice is very important, in particular in today's debate. We do concede that, okay, we understand that the current society we live in a democratic society. At the point in time, and this is where they need to defend the status quo, they need to point to us the particular problem in status quo, the particular problem that is exists in status quo, that we should then now proceed to have like things like terms for all elected people, right? We can clearly see that citizens possess the particular power to remove people from power, right? So what is the particular problem in status quo that should make us then have these particular things? If I'm able to prove to you the harms that come from everything they say, then I think we win this debate. 1, he clearly comes and says to you things about the major fiats they try to push in this debate. 1, the issue of accountability. 2, the issue of fresh ideas. And 3, it controls corruptions, etc., whatnot. Let me now tell you how there's no particular accountability. I have clearly proven to you how these particular people are more likely to now act radically, etc., whatnot. And there's even less accountability in their world. Why? Because if this person is now acting irrationally, whatnot, this is someone who has power. This is someone that is protected by their particular political parties. That is something they forget. Even in terms of like controlling corruption, etc., whatnot. Once my term ends, if the dominant party that is currently ruling is UDA, at the point in time where that dominant party is able to now produce another character or produce someone else, we don't think they solve any problem in terms of like having like, or solving the issues of like corruption, etc., whatnot. They also don't solve the issue of accountability, because the only metric they try to push here is that we will remove you in power and then now you'll be like accountable for your actions, etc., whatnot. But the point in time where I tell you, if there's a dominant party here, then they don't at all give us any particular solution then. In terms of fresh ideas, we feel like it exists in both worlds. We have particular advisors. We can get fresh ideas in both worlds. So I don't think that is something they can run in today's debate. one particular thing you need to understand in today's debate. There's a problem in terms of like the long-term effect of having limiting power in status quo. This then means that one, there's an how do I say this? There's an exacerbated amount of time in terms of like limiting politicians to like giving a particular metric on how this on the amount of time these particular politicians would work through, then that essentially then means they get time to now do everything they are comfortable doing. And if they have power, if they have policies, if they have power, if they have like influence, and in terms of the necessary thing about protecting legacies, then we don't think they particularly care for the people in society. They will harm you regardless. So we don't think that solves that. In our society today, what we essentially saw, or why we think our world is better and why we protect that, right? We think that even if there's the need for protecting or democracy in society, for having the sense of choice in society, this then means that we don't really care about whether the term is long or short, or whether we have like two terms of power to rule. We think then there's an overriding objective here, and that is the democracy of in society. If the leaders or if the society or the citizens think this person is a good ruler, then why should this particular person be removed in power just because of the things they try to fiat? We don't think that is relevant. We think at the end of the day, there's a particular notion or a particular prevalence of like the autonomy of choice for these particular citizens that we then think we need to protect. They need to try and they need to particularly prove to us how anything they try to push overrides the incentive or like overrides the democracy or choice in terms of like the citizens in and of themselves. And they also need to prove why status quo is problematic. From that, I feel like I've done a very relevant job in terms of proving to you why we essentially get more harms in status in their world compared to ours. With that, I rest. Thank you.
We have heard from side proposition and side opposition, both of them defending the motion or against the motion. This House believes that term limits should be imposed on all elected officials. Quick question to our audiences who are possibly political enthusiasts. Tell us, what do you think? Would you prefer a term limit for all elected officials, or would you prefer to necessarily rule as long as you'd likely want in status quo? Now, with that, we have come to the break of this particular show. The fast break though, do not leave your seat, do not touch your dial, do not even touch your remote, do not even stretch for that remote. Debates. We are back from our very short break and we're here to continue with the debate. If you were not here for the first half, few things that went down. CUEA and Strathmore University are battling for the role of winning this particular argument or this debate. From both sides, they are trying to defend which side can offer the maximum level of accountability for all elected officials. Wait until you can respond from the second speakers from both sides. With that, we welcome the second speaker, side proposition, to continue the case of proposition. Hear, hear.
I will go back to the great book that we tend to read, but we tend to avoid reading. The Bible in the book of Hosea 4:6, it says, "My people perish because of lack of knowledge," being knowledgeable of whatever we are doing here. Because it's so sad that I will hear the question of democracy being raised here, or the aspect of democracy being brought when we speak about elected leaders, whereas we've neglected the fact of education about these people who are voting. Have you heard about the aspect of idiots voting for idiots into office? Why are we limiting these terms? There are aspects of where a nation has, where leaders, the elected leaders, the same elected leaders that you are limiting, have made sure that the standards of education in that nation is average, so that they are able to manipulate the need of these citizens. And that's why we educated people will come and create certain laws to bring about how do we limit this power that you really uphold? How do we really put you into account for the 5 years and the 10 years that you have been there? Because even if you look at, we speak of those who have limited terms. In Kenya, for example, the president cannot be sued in a court of law for actions he did on that tenure. But you see, with the limitations of term, after he has come out, we can then get the chance to sue him for his actions, put him into account, and he's able to pay for whatever he didn't pay at that time. How when we bring about accountability and we speak about a person leading 10 years because the people really want him and that's democratic, do you really think that's what the people really want? We have seen situations in Africa where people really have to go for coup for their leaders to be accepted. We really have to go for coup to remove certain leaders. Because these leaders, since they know that they cannot be limited on their terms, they are able to manipulate the election system and be able to win these elections. Haven't we seen that? Isn't it visible from certain tenures where there are no limitations? Then how do you bring in the issue of status quo? The legitimacy of choice. I think by that I explained clearly, but it is the intention of certain leaders to bring a certain, to maintain a certain level of knowledge in us and instill a certain knowledge of those and notions, because that's what they really want us to believe and let us not find out from us. And that's why it's important that some of our systems, if you look, and I understand you're law students, if you look at the basic structure, it is a matter of that there are some choices, even if we leave it to the citizen, it is not upon them. And I'll bring this. How does this really promote, I'll take your POI. How does this really promote accountability? As we have said, it promotes accountability since, despite you having your intentions, we are all humans and we understand that. It's a matter of transactions in every relationship. That is something we cannot refuse because that's human nature. But even if there are these transactions, you're able to know that this time will come and it will end for you. That even if you did something wrong during this tenure, you won't stay here for long, it will be uncovered. The secrets that you did in that office, the money that you came and took in that office, all the systems that you did will be uncovered. When you speak of fresh ideas in power, of fresh notions in power, we are all diverse people. We are all people from different calibers. We understand things differently. I can be an economist. I understand law. I'm a doctor. I understand things to deal with medicine. But these, when we bring these diverse powers, that each and every time it's only a certain group because we allowed a certain system to rule, it won't happen. The first time we explained this in a situation where a certain tribe is the majority. Look, the situation even in Kenya where we have tribalistic systems, where we want a certain kind of person to lead, not because of the ideology that he has, not because of the good things that he brings, but because he is our people, he is our person. I'll take your POI shortly. But because he's a person, we are able to choose him. How does that put him to account? How does that prevent him in a system where there are no limitations of power from taking that office again and again from the ignorance of the citizens that you don't want us to limit their time?
So there are regimes which have term limits, but they still have corruption. Defend why anything changes on your side.
Let's put it in this way, how we are defending how your world wants to view it. Corruption indeed is accounted for where we really instill the values that we really want. When we instill the value of term limits, and as I said, term limits helps us avoid the systems where we're able to choose people because we know what they can do, because they are our people, in the notion of we are certain and we are a group of friends, we don't want somebody else in power. We are able to get these situations where they are corrupt and put them at that time. It's just that some systems are ignorant. It's not that it doesn't work. And even in everything, it has a pro and a cons. That is something we all accept here. But it doesn't mean these are minimal. It limits, and it doesn't fully eradicate corruption, but it limits the corrupt leaders.
We keep running the issue of accountability, and we tell you, even if you remove a particular leader, there's a particular dominant party that pushes leaders. What is the particular guarantee that the next leader coming into this particular dominant party will change the things that you're talking
Thank
about.
you. You've spoken about parties and party autonomy, where a certain party is the head of that nation. Is that really what happens nowadays in the world? With the level of which we have improved? That doesn't happen. It happened in the past. But today, we are seeing systems where, even in Kenya, there is no ruling party, there is no a certain party that holds because of the values. And even when you speak of accountability and this person holding that a certain office for a various number of periods, and we believe in these certain people, it is a bit melodic when I think of it, when you keep on saying that, yes, people will choose this certain party. It doesn't happen today because we are increasing the level of the knowledge that we have, and even in limiting this power, and we are able to limit that these guys, despite you being the dominant party and having all the people, it won't happen that way because at a certain level, we'll get tired. When we speak about the limitations of term parties, we're able to eradicate situations where a certain group becomes the head of the nation. In America, we have the Democrats, the Republicans. Does it mean that this time now, because the Democrats win, every time it's the Republicans that really have the say? When you come to Kenya and you speak of UDA, it doesn't happen that way. We are able to see the cons and the pros of each side of what, and we are able to choose from that. Thank you.
We have had the case of side proposition from both the speakers. We now give an opportunity for side opposition to respond to whatever proposition has brought to the bench. Hear, hear.
Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. We think democracy works like a marketplace for the best leaders. The market forces of demand and supply work such that the citizens are able to pick the best leaders, the leaders that they want, and they are able to remove the leaders that they do not want. What this does is that it ensures a countervailing good which is able to check the government. The beauty within today's debate is that elections exist on both sides. So regardless of whether there is a term limit or not, we think there is a concession that elections exist on both sides. The only thing which is different, and this is what we defend, is the pure form of choice as to which we have on our side, which Kendi probably talked to you about. I'll make this decision very, very simple for the judges. 3 things I'm then going to talk about. Firstly, on who best defends the most pure form of choice which exists within today's debate. If we're able to prove that, we co-opt majority of the impacts they talk to you about, things like representation, accountability, participation. But secondly, on where best do you get continuity of projects? Because we think that's key. And especially if you're talking about a developing context, a developing world, the thing you want most to prioritize is development continuously going ahead. But the final thing is which side has incentives to maybe make the next regime worse and that sort of thing. So firstly, on who best defends the most pure form of choice. On our side, we say that even if there is no term limits, as long as the citizens keep on electing you, because we say that this is a marketplace in itself. So even if they just keep on electing you, we say this is a good thing. You can keep going with your term. What you need to understand is that we prioritize the choice of the citizens most. This is the most pure form of choice which can exist within today's debate. We win on principle. On their side, what happens is that they ignore and manipulate the choice of the citizen. This is because even if you want a certain citizen, they say, no, we'll give you this other citizen because that other one's time is up and that sort of thing. What they do is they assume that you're all idiots and you're not going to make the right decision. What they do on their side is that they screw democracy and they skew your choice in and of itself. We think they are worse on the principle. But secondly, where do we get the best form of continuity for projects? We think on our side, what is likely to happen is that you could exist within the term limits. As long as the citizens are electing you, we think it's a good thing. On their side, if we say that all of you were elected within the past 10 years and your term limit of 2 terms has already elapsed, all of you leave office. What this is likely to mean is that all the projects as to which you've been doing are likely to end. Why is this the case? Because of the antagonistic nature which exists within politics. So for example, if I'm coming into a regime and the previous regime was doing a certain project, and we've seen this every day, the incoming regime is always going to be very antagonistic to ensure that the previous one doesn't achieve its legacy and that sort of thing. We think that's worse on their side. But the next thing is on which side has the incentive for a messed up system. On their side, two things happen. Firstly, you realize as a politician that you cannot deliver all the things that you want within the stipulated time. What it means is that you lose hope of even enacting change in the first instance. What we think this does is that it creates a likelihood and the incentive that you now want to improve yourself more than just probably develop this type of region and that sort of thing. This is why people probably loot in the vast majority of instances, because you lose hope. You have limited time. You can't enact everything you want. You lose hope. But secondly, we think what is likely to happen due to the antagonistic nature of politics is that you want to make sure that the incoming leaders have a worse legacy than yourself. What this is likely to look is like the situation in Kenya, where we always talk about emptying the coffers, because you know that you have a limited time. You want the next person to have a much more difficult time. We think that happens worse on their side, and that's particularly bad. But let me just engage what they say, because it's entirely untrue. The first thing in terms of like concession they say is that the biggest example they have is probably quoting the president. Oh, the president has done this. Oh, the president has done that. The problem with this example in itself is that the president already has a term limit. So the president is already bad with two terms in itself. So they cannot use someone who has 2 terms already in terms of a limit in trying to prove why this is flawed in and of itself. But secondly, on accountability, I think I've already explained how on our side we still have the marketplace for the best leaders. What this then means is that we're also likely to get accountability. If you don't want a certain leader because they are corrupt and that sort of thing, you push them out of office. We are unclear why on our side all of a sudden the system is bad, the system is really good on their side, and they expect that the elections are probably not going to be like effective on our side and effective on their side. If anything, what you need to understand is that if there's a concession within the debate that the system is as bad as these guys say, then the system is likely to continue being bad even after all these things. So there's no surety or there's no guarantee that you're going to get a better leader anyway. But secondly, they say that, you know, idiots elect idiots. Firstly, I think this is really, really offensive to call like majority of the people who turn up, they just wake up at 5 a.m. and go to vote. You call these guys idiots. I don't think that's a really nice thing to say. But secondly, they don't prove why there's a likelihood that you're going to get a better leader in and of itself. Because you see, if the point is you're electing a bad leader, there's no surety which comes from this side that the leader which you're going to get is going to be particularly better. On that side, especially if the system is as malicious as these guys say, then it's likely that you're going to be stuck within the same loop. But on fresh ideas, I think this is something which is well engaged with Kendi. Firstly, like the first rebuttal to this is like we have elections. Secondly, you have Twitter, you have Facebook, which is why majority of the times, most of you are always on your phones and that sort of thing. You can be able to tweet fresh ideas and that sort of thing. I mean, Sonko spends majority of his time on Twitter and that sort of thing. These things get to the leaders, and like we think it's like something which is likely to get to them. But finally, on corruption, I think 3 responses here, because corruption is like their biggest case. If we take it down, then these guys can't win. Firstly, I think in regimes where there's term limits as well, you still have corruption too. What this does is that it's an intuition to prove that corruption doesn't happen simply because there's no term limits. But secondly, we think it accrues because of a failure to like just solve the underlying problems like accountability mechanisms and that sort of thing. Finally, I think these guys have a burden to prove why on all. In status quo, we have for some who have term limits like the president, as they say, they needed to defend why this is ineffective and why we must have this for every other leader. Never been prouder opposition.
Politics, politics, politics. The biggest conversation that Kenyans love to have every single time we have certain discussions. And with that, I know you've been interested about this simple nature of how these university students have posited to you what politics looks like in Kenya, in developing nations, and everything at large. Feel free to engage with us on X and tell us, do you think that politics is enriched through the existence of term limits, or do you think that term limits should not even exist for all elected officials? You could also WhatsApp us on our number 0759 434389. 0759 434389. Before we take a short break, just to let you know, our judges will be back after the break to tell us the deliberation and even the announcement of who has won this particular debate and who has lost the debate. And know you're eager to find out who has swayed the judges and who has For being patient with us and joining us after that short break. With that, we will welcome our judges to ask a question to both the proposing team and the opposing team. The responses that the judges will get might sway them or they might not, but they still need that sort of clarity from the two teams. Now, I will ask Alphas to ask the question to side proposition.
To the side proposition, this is your question. What potential benefits do you see? What potential benefits or drawbacks do you see in implementing the term limit for all the elected officials?
Thank you for that question. I'd like to ask Juliet to ask a question to side opposition.
Okay, so at the point where status quo is failing, where the elected officials without the term limit and the system are existent and the system is still failing, what will be the alternative?
The debaters have had the questions, and now we give them room to respond to the questions they have been asked. Side proposition, you have the floor.
I think to answer the question, you asked the question of what potential drawbacks. There are potential drawbacks, as I said before, nothing, and I repeat again an emphasis on the term nothing, that exists has no pros or cons. In short, I mean nothing is perfect. There are potential drawbacks that happen in a system where the term limit exists, which we are ready to accept. Like where, when you speak about power, when you speak about the aspect of having power to do something and power to stop something, when you bring a leader who knows he has no term limit, their projects are likely to be implemented fully, and no projects left lacking behind or lagging in any way sort. Also, when you limit terms, there's a system where the projects are cut short and the next regime might not or might continue the same project. We agree to that. But despite these potential drawbacks, out of the debate, there are other factors that will lead or are able to be effected to prevent such effects. For example, while we speak about the continuation of a certain project, remember in the debate, the main question was elected officials. In a government, it's not only a matter of elected officials, as we know. There are some officials who are not really elected, and sometimes they retain their positions, and they are able to continue with such projects. But this happens in nations that set certain values. For example, in a nation like Singapore that has set certain values on aspects of how their projects run, aspects of corruption and accountability, it's able to eradicate the cons that come with having no term limit. In a nation like Japan, corruption and plagiarism cannot be a subject because of the certain value system they have created on elected leaders. So despite us having elected officials having their terms limited or not, there are other aspects that need to be looked at. Thank you.
All right, so status quo is failing. I think this is largely not the case. In status quo, I think we have some who have the term limits and some who don't have the term limits. We have MCAs who don't have term limits. We have the president who has term limits. We have governors who have term limits. So it's probably not true to say that term limits have failed. But just in case that's the notion, I think a number of responses. Firstly, they haven't proven that within the debate. We say, and this came through a POI, regimes that also have term limits have fallen too due to things like corruption. They needed to prove a specific link in terms of correlation as to why if you don't have these term limits, then it's very sure that you're going to have these problems like corruption. But secondly, I think in status quo, we have a mechanism where if our leaders are improper, they're taken to the Anti-Corruption Commission, they are impeached, and some of them are even voted out. We think these are enough mechanisms to take care of these things. Thirdly, I think largely it's untrue to the extent where in like democracies like the United Kingdom, where they even have a queen who's living her eternity in power and the king who's living in eternity in power, they are still very, very successful as compared to us who have a president who has a term limit. It's very, very incorrect for them to argue that. But again, even if we concede that we probably are bad, I think the option is worse, because what happens on their side is that you're likely to disrupt all the projects which exist. Secondly, you have every incentive because now you're getting out of power. They are taking you out of power. You need to empty the coffers and just make sure that there's no money left for the next regime. We think we can cure all these things by all that he's saying in terms of strengthening the value systems, strengthening the judicial systems, just not increasing the term limits. We think this is not efficient.
They have responded to the questions, and clearly we are eager to hear whether they swayed these amazing judges or they did not. I hand it over to the chair of the debate to tell us who has won and who has lost this round.
All right. I think the only difference that CUEA and Manchester United have is that CUEA can get points. But based on the motion today, I think we did have something that was really interesting to listen and to watch. And it's a very great shout out to CUEA for being a first timer on campus debate and doing such an excellent job. On this stage once more, new debaters were born. Cool. Term limits, definition of terms from CUEA. I did love the way you did frame your debates, starting from the top to the bottom. Term limits, time span of service, elected officials, their characteristics. You did explain this as these are people who are put in power by the votes of the people to create policies for the Kenyan population, and that was really impressive of you. But again, there's this word all. You left it hanging because, and I think it's because of the assumption that you all know what all means. But again, you realize that this motion is created in a world whereby we have term limits, offices that have term limits, other offices do not have term limits. So when you're arguing the word all, you need to define which exactly offices are this you're niching down to that you should create these term limits for, or which offices are you tackling in essence, in status quo. With that said and done, I think your whole case was majorly on the advantages of these term limits, creating accountability, control corruption and misuse of office, which was really brilliant of you, and you went for the easiest way out, which sometimes did not win you cases, but at least to some extent worked in your favor. But again, the biggest question that was left hanging, how then do you create a self-existing world with these term limits? Because what you're saying here is creating accountability and even corruption can still exist with or without term limits. That aspect was left hanging. But again, the fiat of idiots voting for idiots and creating a manipulative environment for manipulating the Kenyan system, we do not credit that in this debate because we have mechanisms and checks and balances in status quo, like voting people out of no confidence and impeachments and all those kind of extras. So idiots voting in idiots, those idiots are going to be removed from office regardless. And Kenyans do not have such low IQ as you presume them to have. But again, team opposers, this is Strathmore. I think I love the way you engage their debate. The whole logic about these term limits are going to put pressure on those elected individuals to now at the point whereby they realize that they cannot fulfill their manifesto or their promises that they meant to the people inside the term that has been provided. They opt to go and empty coffers and other intensity of harms that are going to affect the people who put them in power. With that kind of logic line alone and that weight of case on that kind of premise, you win this debate. And with that said and done, this House rules that this House believes that term limits should not be imposed on all elected offices.
To everyone that is watching, clarity is that the team that wins this debate is Strathmore University, who've been able to garner up 3 points from this particular debate. Unfortunately for CUEA University, they have been able to also garner up 1 point, which is not so good, but they have another fighting chance in the next rounds for them to possibly rise in the tab, or if they have very good speaker scores, then they've performed very well. I know some of you are asking some of the jargons that we were able to use in this debate, and mostly it's POI. What necessarily is POI, or why do people raise their hands in the middle of that debate? POI stands for point of information, which is ideally a debater seeking clarity from the speaker who's currently giving their case. Now, With that, we have come to the end of Campus Debates show tonight. Thank you for joining us this particular time. Thank you for choosing to spend your time with us tonight. And with that, we'd like to wish you a good night and see you again on Monday at 8 p.m. My name is Mercy Vugutsa, your host.